Uh-oh. There we go. We all panic. Oh, hi. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the August 7th, I think it is, 2025 Board of Nursing meeting. We're going to start with an informational video about how to participate in virtual board meetings.
Welcome to the Professional and Vocational Licensing Virtual Board Meeting.
When the meeting begins momentarily, the chair will take a roll call, explain any specific rules for this particular board, and then move to public comment. The name of the board member will appear on the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. For instance, this is board member Y, and this is board member E. Public testimony will be accepted at the beginning of the meeting and before each agenda item. You can indicate that you are ready to testify by clicking on the Raise Hand button being circled by the mouse on your screen now. At the appropriate time, the board will recognize you to speak and ask you to unmute your mic as shown here. Again, public testimony will be accepted at the beginning of the meeting and before each agenda item. Public attendees will not be able to unmute their microphone until recognized by the board. Public attendees who are recognized to testify will be asked to identify themselves by name and their affiliated organization if applicable. Please mute your microphone when you are finished speaking, as a courtesy to others and members of the board. Public attendees will not be able to unmute themselves after the testimony is completed unless recognized again after raising their hand. At some point during the meeting, the board may choose to move into executive session. When the board moves into executive session, the board members' microphones and video feeds will be turned off, and a similar screen as you see now will be displayed. When the board returns from executive session, their microphones will be turned on, as well as their video cameras.
Welcome again to the Professional and Vocational Licensing Virtual Board Meeting.
At this time, the chair will call the meeting to order and take a roll call, as well as explain any additional rules that may be specific to this board.
Excuse me. Good morning, everybody. Some additional information about participating in virtual board meetings before we get started. As a reminder, if you wish to provide written testimony on any agenda item for the Board of Nursing, please submit your testimony to nursing@dcca.hawaii.gov or by hard copy mail to the address listed at the top of the agenda. We do request submission, bless you, of testimony at least 24 hours prior to the meeting to ensure that it can be distributed to board members. Related to attending our virtual board meetings, for internet access to view the meeting and provide live oral testimony, please use the link at the top of the agenda. You are here. You will be asked to enter your name. The board does request that you enter your full name, but you may use a pseudonym or other identifier if you wish to remain anonymous. You will also be asked for an email address. You can provide anything that conforms to a standard email format. Your microphone will be automatically muted. When the chair asks for public testimony, you may click the raise hand button found on your Zoom screen to indicate that you wish to testify about that agenda item. The chairperson will individually enable each testifier to unmute their microphone. When recognized by the chair, please unmute your microphone before speaking and mute your microphone after you finish speaking. If you are attending by phone, you will have audio-only access. If you'd like to provide testimony, when the chair asks for public testimony, you can provide testimony by You can indicate you want to provide testimony by entering star and then 9 on your telephone's keypad. After entering star and then 9, a voice prompt will let you know that the host of the meeting has been notified. When recognized by the chair, you may unmute yourself by pressing star and then 6 on your phone. A voice prompt will let you know that you are unmuted. Once you're finished speaking, please enter star and then 6 to mute yourself again. For both internet and phone access, when testifying, you will be asked to identify yourself and the organization, if any, that you represent. Each testifier will be limited to 5 minutes of testimony per agenda item. If the connection to the virtual meeting is lost for more than 30 minutes, the meeting will be continued on a specified date and time to be posted on the board's website. And you can find instructions for participating in virtual board meetings on the State of Hawaii's website, there at the top of the agenda. At this time, I'm going to take a roll call of board members to establish a quorum so we can call to order. I'm Carrie Oliveira, I'm the chair, I am present. Vice Chair Jill Riggs.
Present.
Darren Dunbar.
Present.
Darren LaQuo. For board members attending virtually, please indicate whether you are alone in your your non-public location. Sherry Shields Hansen.
Present and alone.
And Rebecca Moore.
Present and alone.
We do have Terrence Artani, who's excused for the moment. We do have a quorum, so we are officially called to order. All right, we're going to begin with the chair's report. My report first, three things. One, NCSBN's annual meeting is next week, so myself and Terrence Aratani will be attending on the board's behalf. We'll be part of the voting delegation for that meeting. So we will make sure that we bring back any updates that are material to this board from that meeting. And then if there's any feedback based on our discussion of the model rules and the model act that we need to relay as part of that conversation, we will do so also. So be prepared for an update on that. Second announcement that I have is I got an update from our license renewals, and I just wanted to provide some numbers for the record. So our license renewal period was April 21st to June 30th of 2025. The number of on-time license renewals for APRNs was 3,032, LPNs was 1,730, and RNs, 31,463 registered nurses renew their license on time. Total, that was 36,225 nurses renewed their licenses during that period of time. It's a big number, but I think it's proportional to an increase. We've seen an increase in the number of people who hold a nursing license in the state of Hawaii, so I think it's proportional to that. So thank you very much to PVL for running that report, and EO, Alex, for making that report available to me. Any questions on that? Go team. Our last announcement, which I'm loath to make, is that we are bidding ahui ho to our secretary, Mark Yoshimura, who has served the Board of Nursing for 4 years. I'm just gonna say that prior to, and I was telling Mark this earlier, I don't remember any of the secretaries. I'm the longest standing board member on the Board of Nursing. I predate pretty much everybody except the Deputy Attorney General on this board. And Mark is the first secretary that I remember. And one of the first things I remember about Mark is we got a scope of practice inquiry related to, it was either IV hydration clinics or like thread lifts or something that we had opined on repeatedly. Mark, the first secretary, was like, pretty sure there's minutes about this somewhere. And he dug them up and he was like, hey board, here's what you guys have already decided. And what I loved about that was the initiative and the diligence, but also in terms of making our meetings more efficient, but consistency with our previous opinions, which is in service of the public protection. And so really, that's just like a small example of just I appreciate your brain and your effort and your attention and your engagement in the work that you've done for this board. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate you. I'm so mad that you're leaving, but we will live. Courtney is going to take his place, who is also very smart, and I'm very excited about that. But I adore you, and I'm sad to see you go. So thank you to Mark for your service. I did bring him a strawberry cake. I didn't bake it because I don't bake with fruit. That's a thing I won't do. But that's his favorite, so we will celebrate him at the end of the meeting. So thank you very much. We appreciate you, Mark. And with that, that concludes the chair's report. Does anybody want to provide testimony on the chair's report as an agenda item?
Thank you, Chair. There are no raised hands.
Brilliant. That concludes that agenda item. We will then move to... Ooh.
Excuse me, Chair.
Hi, Terrence.
Hi, this is Terrence Hartine. Just want to note my presence and that I am alone in my room.
Thank you. We appreciate your joining and letting us know you're here. All right, we will move on to our next agenda item then, which is the approval of our minutes from the July 3rd meeting. Is there anybody who wants to provide any corrections or amendments to those minutes? If we need to discuss anything in the executive session, we can go into the executive session to discuss those changes. If not, is there a motion to approve the minutes as circulated?
I'll move, Terrence.
Thank you, Terrence, for the motion. Is there a second?
I do have a correction.
Okay, Bradley Kuo.
On the first page, it says guests, Jeremy Creekmore, Hawaii Association of Professional Nurses. However, he was...
Jeremy wasn't present. Yes, you are correct. So we will make that adjustment to the guest list. Any other revisions? All right, so I'll rescind the previous motion and then ask for a motion for, with modifications. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
This is
Rebecca.
I will take Bradley's motion and Rebecca's second. Does any board member wish to vote no, recuse themselves, or abstain from voting on that motion? Seeing none, hearing none, the ayes have it, the motion carries. Thank you so much, board, I appreciate that. All right, our next item on the agenda is proposed changes to the NCSBN Model Act and rules. So we did, the reason this was originally on the agenda was because I wanted, in preparation of going to the Delegate Assembly for NCSBN, to have a conversation with you folks about their change to the definition of assessment for LPNs. We had a conversation about that. Our Deputy Attorney General reminded us that we can, as a board, if we don't like the way that NCSBN has described the scope of practice, we can go on the record as saying that we would deviate from their interpretation of the scope of practice for our purposes. So that is a recourse for us if we are uncomfortable. These are right now in draft. They will be voted on by the Delegate Assembly. So until they become official, once they do, if they become official as amended, we can revisit the conversation if we're uncomfortable with their definition of pretty much anything in the scope of practice. But in particular, I was concerned about the word assessment. I think we had maybe possibly an incomplete packet last time, so there was a request.
I would like to publicly apologize that the packet was indeed complete. There were certain chapters that were literally one-liners.
One line.
And I missed them, so I apologize.
So we did have complete packets.
Yes, we
did. But I did want to provide the board an opportunity if you wanted, if there was anything in the revision to either the act or the rules that you wanted to discuss ahead of the Delegate Assembly. I would like to provide you the opportunity to introduce those discussion points if you have any.
I guess so. This is Bradley. So I guess my main question, since there are some challenges within the state of, with regards to nurse licensure compact and APRN compact, if we do not, if those are not part of our state, how does this affect whatever voting and approval from our delegation and whatnot?
So the NLC functions separately from the rest of the voting delegation for NCSBN. So at the annual meeting, for example, there's one whole day. That's just the NLC meeting, and all the commissioners for the Nurse Licensure Compact, they meet, and they will do all of their business. And so Hawaii doesn't participate in that meeting because we are not. So I can attend as a guest, but the committee itself will do its business, and we don't have any voting on that. So what we would be voting on in the Delegate Assembly is everything that does pertain to any exam user member of NCSBN.
Gotcha. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
I appreciate these questions. If you've never been to an NCSBN conference, you have no idea what any of this actually is. So I really appreciate the questions. Bradley, thank you for that one. There is a question from Karen Boyer. Wait, so before we acknowledge Karen, does any board member have anything else that they want to, any other questions or things they want to discuss? Okay, Karen. Aloha, Karen.
Hi, good morning, board members.
Good morning.
And so in reading the minutes, is this really an effort to streamline the communication with the scope of practice in the NCSBN model rules for APRNs, RNs, and LPNs? That's what I got from the minutes, if I understood the context.
My intention in putting the Model Act and Rules of Discussion on the agenda was to make sure that if there was anything that our board wanted to make sure was relayed during the NCSBN meeting, during the conversation in advance of voting on the revisions. So this was, the intention was for me to have a conversation with the board so that I could relay any thoughts from the board back to NCSBN if that was necessary. So that is what the intention was. I don't know if that's inconsistent with your perception of the minutes, I guess.
Alex, I think you provided some background on this. Is this NCSBN's attempt to streamline the communication with assessment with I mean, because that information was included, APRN, RN, and LPN. Like, I mean, they want the language to be the same, right? Perform assessment based on scope of practice. Am I reading that correctly?
Yes, I mean, that's my understanding based on the proposed rationale that they provided for the change to the LPN language. I think what I discussed last time was, I also was looking at that change to the LPN language and questioning it, but then when I went to the rationale section, which last time we hadn't split them up into separate sections, so it was a bit hard to go through, but this time we do have it in a separate section. The rationale was just to make the language uniform with the RN and the APRN, and nothing about the scope of practice, at least in their stated rationale. And of course, that doesn't stop anyone from, raising any concerns about the language when we go to the meeting, just to confirm, but that is what is contained inside of the written rationale.
Okay. And in our own Nurse Practice Act, I think it says follow NCSBN rules, basically, and then there's a sentence for the role of the LPN, or the definition of the LPN. That will hold in our state, correct? Both.
I'm not entirely sure what you're referring. You're just talking about in HRS itself?
Yes,
Okay.
the definition of LPNs.
Right. So we have our own definition, and even though, so it's Hawaii Revised Statute 457-6.5 lays out that we follow the scope of practice set out by the Model Act and rules from NCSBN, but we are allowed to deviate from it so long as we state in our minutes exactly how we are deviating and a rationale for doing so.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
Thanks, Karen. Darren?
Just want to clarify something you said earlier. We talked about this in the assessment piece last time. Is what you said a bit ago about if they vote on this and this gets changed, we would then have the opportunity to go back and either make recommendations and or change our act if we don't agree with what gets voted on.
It's more that what Alex was just describing. So if they end up making these changes and we're uncomfortable with whatever aspect of the change is, we can come back and have that conversation. And then as long as we have a discussion and document in our minutes that we would make a deviation from our interpretation of the scope of practice from what NCSBN has put in their Model Act and rules. So as long as we have a conversation about that and document it in our minutes as a decision, it doesn't need to be an elaborate sort of like legislative change process or anything like that.
Or rules change.
Or rules change. That's a separate conversation. Correct, yes.
So to that end, you guys are attending this meeting, right? Do we have
Me and Terrence are attending,
Okay.
yes.
do we have a collective opinion on that will be presented at that, or are we not?
Well, that was my question, if there was particular concern, if there was, if you wanted me to provide testimony on behalf of this board related to that particular revision or any other revision, we could certainly do that. The process for adopting the rules revision is that if they use parliamentary procedure, so there's an opportunity to provide testimony from the delegation. So if there's some position you would like me to take, I'm happy to relay that on behalf of the board. Based on the EO's recommendation last time, that's a arduous thing, and there's no guarantee that it would make any revisions, but ultimately, we have the control over what our definition of scope is here, us. So,
Can I voice some concerns
Yeah,
about it
absolutely.
at this point then?
Yeah.
So similar to, and I've thought a lot about this since our last meeting, I readily accept and understand that LPNs and LVNs collect health data, and that in a semantic sort of way that can be translated as assessment. But at least to this juncture in nursing's history, one of the features that has differentiated LPN practice from RN practice is the ability to assess and or make judgments upon those assessments.
Sure.
I remember last month my concern was, I think if the language goes this way, it opens up clinical and healthcare environments to interpret that as they will, and might LPNs then, because it has a very broad conduct a nursing assessment. Could that be the 12-hour nursing assessment that an RN is typically, you know what I'm saying? And I don't want to get too far in the weeds from an operations standpoint.
Sure.
That's my concern. And if I'm the lone voice on the board, I'm okay with that also. I just have a concern about that word, conducts nursing assessments. Again, semantically, is collecting health data, measuring different aspects of a person's health status an assessment? It is.
Right.
But
What does that look like in actual practice? And is that too
and
expensive?
then the rationale, they go on to say, consistent with both RN and APRN scope of practice. Well, the reason we have 3 different levels of nursing practice in our country is because each one has a different level and scope of responsibility relative to the assessment, treatment, care, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So,
And I think that's, I think kind of ironically, that was NCSBN's intention, was to, you can perform an assessment within your scope of practice and then subsequently delineate the scope of practice. So if you lined up in the model rules the rules and or act, what LPNs are allowed to do, and then you line that up against what RNs are allowed to do, there is a difference in the way that they've specified it there.
Sure.
So I think what it's going to take is us, nurses, the board, hospitals, et cetera, really examining like what the boundaries are, what does an assessment constitute within the confines of the rest of the specification. But I think I fully expect that this is going to be a question that gets raised during the meeting. So I will definitely, if it's not, I will pipe up and ask NCSBN and the board of directors about what their thoughts are really on kind of putting reasonable, practical boundaries around the interpretation of an assessment. I don't think that you are alone in that at all, and I don't think that's not going to be a comment we hear from other people.
And so, can I add one more final point? Just going back to Karen's point.
Sure.
If our LPN scope of practice refers to following the NCBSN model, and this refers to whatever their scope of practice is, that leaves a lot to determination or interpretation.
Yes.
So, I'll pause there.
Okay.
I have a concern for that.
I'd like to say something.
Yeah, I see you, Sherry.
Okay, yeah, so I agree with everything you're saying, and I think last time we talked about that it really was delineated then down to the scope of practice. I just have a question for those in hospital practice. What do you call the assessment that the LPN does? Do you call it something different? Do they chart in a different place? I'm just for my own information. Do we call it something different
I love that question,
than an
Sherry.
assessment?
Because of the gray areas and a number of other issues, our organization does not use RNs or LPNs in the inpatient setting. They're used in
Okay.
ambulatory settings. Yeah, we
Right,
have,
so that,
yeah. And
yeah, that makes it easy.
it does.
It
My
makes sense.
concern is,
I was just
how might
wondering,
that
I
change?
mean,
And
what
one
would
could say, this
what
could
would
work
we
to our
change it
benefit.
Hold on,
to?
hold on. One of you at a time. I have no idea what either of you is saying. Sherry, go ahead.
Well, I know, like I mentioned last time, we do in the text, in the, education system, we call it data collection. But I'm just saying that I think, and we talked about this last time, that it's still assessment, observing things, as you said last time, Carrie. So I was just wondering what we would call it that would be different if we asked the model to change. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So.
I have just a comment.
Hold on. Does anybody have an answer to Sherry's question?
Yeah, so
Okay.
in the hospital setting where I am too, we don't use LPNs.
Okay.
Yeah. Do in the clinics, and they do collect a lot of data, but that's about it. We don't really use the word assessment when it comes to LPN.
Okay.
Yeah. And the only thing I'll add is that, doesn't it already say conducting nursing assessments, and they're just taking out collecting data?
Yes, it does. And so I think that's been a really interesting challenge, like as a layperson on the board. The language has already been there
Yeah.
to include the word assessment, but there is this very clear understanding among nurses that an assessment is not something an LPN does, which confuses me as a layperson, I'll be
Yeah,
perfectly honest
yeah.
with you. Because that word just means I'm surveying a situation and making an evaluation that, an intervention is necessary. I'm not the one necessarily deciding what that intervention ought to be, but that there is some attention that needs to be paid to this patient. It does not seem outside the LPN scope of practice to me, but that's just me.
Correct. It's because they have parameters though,
Yeah.
right? So if the blood pressure is this, go get an RN.
Right.
If this, go get an RN, and that sort of thing.
Yes.
And so maybe that's what they're thinking about conducting nursing assessment, but the fact that it's already there, and they're just taking out collecting data, I'm okay as long as we know that we are in charge of the scope of practice.
Sure.
Right?
Yes.
For the state, so.
This is Bradley. I almost wonder though if collecting data is delineating the difference.
Could be. Yeah.
And now we're removing that
Moving that.
difference.
Yeah.
I think
That's a
that's
good point.
how folks have been interpreting it. I agree with that assessment, Bradley.
I think the other two key features for me is that LPN practice, things can be delegated to an LPN by an RN, an APRN, or a physician.
Right.
And in this particular piece, there's nothing about delegation.
Delegation's in another section.
Okay. Maybe I should look at that to relate that to this. And then the other thing is communication, just what she just said. Measure the blood pressure. You have an obligation to report that if it's this.
Right.
Or if you see the patient exhibiting this symptom, or, and so that's, maybe I'm getting too in the weeds on just this one word, but Bradley hit the nail on the head, is that it feels like they're removing the very piece that differentiates the capability or the training and practice of LPNs related to, are they part of assessment? Absolutely.
Right.
And I think it's just that the nomenclature, which I understand then standardizes things, but at the end of the day, we have 3 different types of nurses who perform in different scopes. So
I just wanted to draw the.
I have another thought. This is Sherry Shields. I have another thought. So I'm thinking that maybe they're thinking data collection is too focused in. Data collection is just taking the data, whereas LPN still has to do something about it. And I think maybe they're taking out data collection to make sure that, again, it goes down to a person's scope of practice. Because data collection might just be, okay, I wrote it down, now what do you want me to do about it?
Right.
And so I think assessment is a little bit fuller word that allows LPNs, even though they're not doing that shift assessment, they're still assessing the client and then making a decision according to their scope of practice. So I think maybe they're trying to make it a little bit more action-oriented than just so focused in on data collection. But that was my thought. Thank you.
I appreciate, Sherry, what you said, but just to be clear, what does it currently say? Data collection and assessment?
Correct, yes.
Conducting nursing
Yes.
assessments.
Okay.
Yes. So they're not adding anything, they're removing the data collection aspect of it, which presumably, I would assume, you cannot do assessment without the collection of data.
Correct.
For any level of scope of practice. So they bothered to specify that for LPNs, but nobody else. So they're removing that. EO Pang was gonna say something.
Yes. I just wanted to note that the scope of practice is defined not only in the Model Act, but also in the model rules in a bit more detail. So perhaps the board should take a look at the model rules, particularly pages 4 and 6. So page 4 has the standards related to the LPN scope of practice, and page 6 has the standards related to the RN scope of practice. And some of the things that may differentiate the two are on page 4 for the standards of the LPN scope. You have implementing nursing interventions and prescribed medical regimens in a timely and safe manner, documenting nursing care provided accurately and timely. And in contrast, for the RN scope of practice, you have identifying changes in patient health status and taking appropriate action, documenting nursing care changes in the patient condition, and all relevant information. So, maybe the board should discuss these differences in language between the two scopes and see if they're comfortable with this, because this language is also part of the overall scope.
Right. Yes. It's not just that line. I think it's, in fact, the line specifically refers to the rest of the definition of the scope.
Yeah.
So, if I may, I would formally make a motion to call the question, actually, if I felt the need to. But given that I think that there's opportunity to hear other conversation from other boards at the delegate assembly, we always have the kuleana to decide whether or not we want to deviate from the Model Act and model rules. I would like to request that we pend any further conversation on the Model Act and rules until we find out what NCSBN actually votes on and approves, and then we can revisit the issue of whether we want to put different boundaries around the scope. Would you guys be okay with that?
I think that's fair, especially because there could be different scopes and rules in different states.
There are.
So they have to make that determination for themselves.
Correct.
So with us having a discussion after the fact, I think that's appropriate.
Any
Once it's finalized.
dissent on that?
No, I'm okay with that. When is the?
Next week.
Okay.
Next week. I really appreciate your thoughtful attention to the language. The language is what defines the scope, so I appreciate your insights on that, and I will do my very best to provide a thorough report back from our meeting. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate your willingness to table this for a bit. Public testimony. Thank you, EO, for reminding me. You guys can provide testimony on any agenda item, but I will forget to ask, and they will scold me. Would anybody like to provide testimony on the agenda item of the Model Act and Rules?
Thank you, Chair. There are no raised hands.
Thank you, Mark. All right, we'll move on then to our next agenda item, which is a question regarding out-of-state nursing schools. EO, if I okay to hand that one to you?
So Laura Reichart, who is with us here today, and can speak to this question in more detail if the board has questions. Posed this question Is an out-of-state school that is offering pre-license RN education with clinicals taking place in Hawaii required to undergo the approval process as established in Hawaii Administrative Rules, Chapter 18? So along with this question, I provided some materials. One is this announcement that has been posted on our nursing website since 2022 on out-of-state post-licensure nursing programs, so different from the pre-licensure question being asked by Laura. But that handout states to the question of, do we approve out-of-state /online/distance learning post-licensure nursing programs? No. Provided the nursing program does not have a campus in the state, there is no application. Does the State Board of Nursing have to be notified by the out-of-state online or distance learning post-licensure nursing programs? No. Does the faculty of the out-of-state online distance learning post-licensure nursing program have to be licensed as a nurse in Hawaii? Only if the faculty is physically teaching or precepting a nursing student in this state, then yes. And lastly, are graduates of an out-of-state /online/distance learning post-licensure nursing program able to qualify for a Hawaii nurse license? And the answer was, if the nursing program is nationally accredited and meets the requirements of HRS 457-7 or 457-8, then yes. So that is some context as to the board's prior decisions regarding out-of-state post-licensure nursing program. And then I also provided an excerpt of the relevant parts of the rules relating to the approval and standards regarding nursing education in Hawaii. So with that said, does anyone have thoughts on this question?
I can speak a little bit about California. Obviously, the pre-licensure, any clinical has to have an affiliation agreement with the agency that they're working with. And in California, and I'm sorry I did not write the bill number, but they attempted to pass a state bill that required anyone doing pre-licensure education for nursing from an out-of-state program with a face-to-face clinical in the state of California, where they had 5 criteria. They had to be approved and accredited in their state and be in good standing, and they could not take placement slots away from any California in-state programs, and they had to submit a report to the BRN. And the supervisor that has the students must have a direct California state license. Now, I don't know how California, the bill I think was killed. I'm not sure, according to what I could figure out, California still wants them to submit a report. I don't know how they keep track of that because they already have 152 programs in state that do pre-licensure. So I just wanted to add that California was also working on this a little bit. But again, they do have an affiliation agreement with the agency. So it's kind of back to the agency a little bit, in my opinion, that they have a qualified preceptor and that the school they're working with is an approved school. That was just information for y'all.
Thanks, Sherry.
This is Bradley. Can I ask a question of Laura?
Yes.
Okay. So, Laura, from your understanding, what is the current lay of the land for this particular problem or issue?
There is a School of Nursing who has students enrolled in the state that is a pre-licensure program that's located out of state. And the use case is that the Center for Nursing, we run a clinical placement collaborative. It does not replace, to Sherry's note, memorandum of agreements or affiliate agreements between the healthcare facility and the school. That still has to happen, but we facilitate clinical placements. And so the question came up, and we sent it to Alex because it's uncertain to us if they are a qualified school in the state or not. Like the criteria we normally use is this post-license guidance, and there are out-of-state post-license programs, and that criteria is clear. There are in-state schools with a brick and mortar, that criteria is clear, and then now here's this other instance, and so the volume, I mean, irrespective of the volume, it's kind of like a yes or no thing. Like, is there guidance for them or is there not? How do we move forward in the environment that exists today?
And follow up, is this a new issue or has this been an ongoing problem for years?
This is the first instance that
That's what I thought. Okay.
So I think that malfunction is as our Deputy Attorney General has reminded us repeatedly, the law lags behind reality. And so I think what we're dealing with is a situation, my interpretation of the rule is that it makes no reference to out-of-state programs, right? There's no regulatory boundary that includes out-of-state programs in the way that the rules are currently written. So I think the question at the heart of what you're asking is, does a school that's not located here but has students in clinicals qualify as an in-state program? That it would put it in the purview of the regulation.
And if I can clarify, when I read the laws and I read the rules and I read the board communication, the board communication references brick and mortar, but it's not in the laws and it's not in the rules. And so to your point, and to clarify that point you were making, yes, at what point does that in-state criteria turn on? And I've read other statutes and rules and programs in the state. There are other criteria related to post-secondary education. I'm going through the Board of Nursing criteria in other states and see that there are many other ways, in addition to what Sherry had described. There's other ways that other states are handling this, but we don't have that in our state. So I think the question is, what constitutes in-state education for Hawaii?
Laura, do we know, is this the reason for it is because this is where the instructor is located and their students either who live here or could get here? Do we believe or understand that this may be a whole cohort and this instructor is going to carry them all the way through the program? They just have these Hawaii students that will fall on. Do we have any of that detail?
Yeah. In part, yes. I feel like I shouldn't represent the school and I don't want to misstate exactly what they're doing. But part of those questions on the educational design and trying to figure out how to accommodate their clinical placements is what made me start looking into this more concertedly.
Mrs. Bradley, my concern is that this particular institution has found a loophole and is taking advantage of that loophole as it is right now with our rules and HRS. And that's concerning.
I wouldn't argue a loophole necessarily. It's just the language in the rule doesn't account for the scenario that has evolved over time, right? Distance ed is a thing now, right? You have a program that's located someplace else, your students are here. Education has become more flexible, I think, than when the rules were originally written. So I guess substantively, I suppose I would consider it a loophole.
It's a loophole.
But I don't know how we would, I cannot find a justification in the language in the rule that describes the approval of nursing education programs that would somehow place a school that is not physically in Hawaii for us to define that suddenly as an in-state school. I cannot find a rationale for an interpretation of the rule that would do that. So I don't know how we would apply the rule to a school that we've already determined. And the language here in this guidance from 2022 where we don't regulate out-of-state post-license programs, we don't regulate out-of-state programs, period. So my recommendation would remove the post-license from that guidance and update it, because in point of fact, the rules don't account for out-of-state programs. And there certainly isn't a nuanced definition for if the student is on whatever, we have X number of students, or there's just no provision for that. So I don't know how we would interpret it that way.
Darren, I have another question. To your awareness, Laura, is it, I'll lump it as a traditional clinical, like med-surg, OB, peds, one of those, versus something specialty, like a transcultural or a public health kind of rotation specifically focusing on the population that resides in Hawaii? Is it anything like that?
My understanding is that the students are residents of Hawaii and they will be completing the vast majority of their entire pre-licensure education in Hawaii. Okay. So I would presume that they are completing all of that, or at least the a great percentage of that, although I don't, again, I am not representing the school and I don't have that exact information.
35 years ago, I took a transcultural nursing course. We spent a month in Hawaii on 5 islands as part of our nursing. It was an elective. And so that's where I wondered, does it have to do with culture? Does it have to do with public health or community health? But if it's your traditional clinical...
Higher education.
Yeah, right. That's another bubble here. And I share the concern.
Sherry, do you have a thought?
Yeah, so I think in this case, like in California, our main concern was losing slots in clinical because we're so pushed for spaces in clinical practice. But I think it does go back to I think I agree with you that we cannot approve every program that even touches our patients. And I think it goes back to the agency. If the agency has this affiliation agreement and they're allowing these students to practice in their agency, do we really have any say in that?
Can I ask a clarifying question? Sure. My understanding of the reason why I'm here is because the Board of Nursing's purview includes overseeing nursing education.
Sure.
So I guess I respectfully, I respect bandwidth, and I respect scope, and I respect reality. So I'm not. It's not a question of doing something that is kind of like physically and from a bandwidth perspective impossible, but that is the purview of the Board of Nursing to oversee nursing education. Okay. So I'm troubled with it because I'm kind of in the same instance as well. Like I think we share this. We share the conundrum. Is that how even though you're saying that it is not in the purview, I still need clear guidance, and if that clear guidance is when is that clear guidance saying that we are not going to be reviewing these, but they are still allowed, just like the post-licensure education. So if that's the case, that's the clear guidance. But I feel like for the safety of my organization and our work to be complementary and support a lot of what the board also does, right, is support safe and high quality nursing education and entry into practice and professionalism and standards. This guidance in particular, this finite detail, I think if we could have clear language, that would be very helpful. I will also add that because I have been reviewing what other states are doing, I am more than happy to share that work with the board for review of what other states are doing at a future time.
The case could also be made that as it is, our local programs have a hard enough time placing their students, and many of us inpatient healthcare organizations we have limitations on how many students can come to clinicals. So one might say if there's somebody else not following the same rules, they should at least have to follow the same rules, or let our programs have access to those clinical sites and facilities first.
This is Bradley. Darren, thank you for saying that, because this very discussion came up several years ago when another school tried to set up shop here in the state, and the concern was related to the number of clinical placement sites and how that would take away from our current well-established operating programs. And so again, I still think that this is very much a loophole in that process and in the fabric of what we have designed here. And I appreciate, Laura, that you mentioned that and reminded us that yes, indeed, we do have purview over education, nursing education here in the state. And that's exactly what this is.
I would point out that the way you fix a loophole is you change the language in the rule. So the loophole exists currently, which means congratulations, you found your way into the loophole in the language in the rule. So if what we want to do is say, you can't operate here if you're providing pre-licensed education unless you have board approval, then the rule needs to say that. So that would require a rule change, which means currently they can in the current language, is my thought. Would you like to add anything?
I'm not sure loophole is the right word or term. It's just like the law is silent.
Right.
There's a void. And part of we've briefly talked about this or touched on it last month. Excelsior, had, I don't know, what was it, 10 years ago, 15 years ago? It was trying to do out-of-state education in Hawaii. We looked at our HAR. There was nothing there. I'm not sure how it was resolved, but part of the challenges is that for the board to have jurisdiction, I know they are authorized, and rightfully so, to regulate education, nursing education. But part of the challenge is that if a California or Texas school does something, and most of your HAR is currently aimed at protecting the nursing students, like if they take all their money or don't offer what they say they're going to offer, never give a certificate or degree or any training, how the challenge for RICO Hawaii to protect the Hawaii student in chasing after the school that didn't deliver on their promises. We have no long-arm statutes. California doesn't regulate Hawaii programs, but I'd be interested in seeing what you find about other states' regulations of out-of-state education programs. But that's the legal challenge to subpoena, to get long-arm jurisdiction on an out-of-state program. That was my recollection of Excelsior's conversation 10 or 15 years ago.
So I have a question, and I'll take the angle from being the newest board member to understand. If somebody came to the board to report an RN who was doing something professionally that may not be spoken of in the Nurse Practice Act, what would the typical approach of the board be? Would we conduct an investigation? Would we try to find out more information and then make a determination of, well, it doesn't speak to it. Do we add language to close a loophole or a void? Like, in other words, if we got any other sort of concern brought to us, how does the board typically address that?
The nursing student is not a licensee yet, correct?
The nursing student would be a member of the public.
Right. So I don't know if the board would have jurisdiction over non-licensees.
Are you asking about students or nurses?
Well, more about the program, because to Laura's
Okay.
point is that because we, as the Board of Nursing, we oversee nursing education.
Sure, okay.
So I just used an example of a nurse who may be performing, when I practiced as a nurse midwife, there were nurses in a physician's practice doing fundal height measurements and fetal heart rate assessments and all those things that could fall under the scope of assessment for a nurse.
Sure.
Someone tried to allege that that person was trying to practice an advanced practice nurse, right? So when a concern is brought to a board, a professional board, what is our next step? Laura's identified that there's this issue, and this board has jurisdiction over nursing education programs when education is taking place in Hawaii. I guess, what is our next step? Where do we go with this?
RICO,
And
that's an
this is about me
investigation.
just wanting to understand how we do
Sure,
that.
yes.
RICO, which is the Regulated Industries Complaints Office, would conduct an investigation, probably contact those involved, and then make a recommendation to the board on what next steps to take. Like, such as on this agenda, at the end, we have Chapter 91 adjudicatory matters. Those are matters that have come before RICO. They've conducted an investigation. They've contacted the licensee and come to an agreement with the licensee on how to proceed on their licensure. So it would be a similar process to that.
Let me back up on something I heard you say. You said the board has jurisdiction over nursing education that happens in Hawaii. The board has jurisdiction over programs located in Hawaii, not broadly all nursing education, as currently written in your HAR. So if Company X from state Y teaches Nurse Z, where's our legal basis to pursue or investigate any of those entities?
Just to keep this conversation, in track, I suppose, is I want us to just answer this question based on what we have.
Right.
And that is separate from whether or not we should continue on as we are with just the rules we have.
Yes.
This discussion on the policy behind it is totally valid. But this is the item that's on the agenda, and we need to answer this question, and if we want to discuss more on how we would modify the rules, for example, to account for out-of-state programs, perfectly valid to do so.
Thank you, EO, for that. So the question is, does a school that is located outside the state but is providing clinical education or any education in the state of Hawaii require approval by the board? Per the conversation, it seems to me the answer to that question is no. Is there any dissent on that interpretation of the rules? So no. No.
All right, this is Terrence.
Is that the guidance? Is that
From Terrence.
Terrence. I have a question. Is the board required to make a determination? Because I sat on the Board of Public Accountancy, and there were questions that were posed to the board, and we actually declined to respond and said, seek your own legal counsel for an interpretation.
That's a great question. I'm going to defer to our attorney on that one.
You can certainly do that also.
Okay. Thoughts?
You don't have to answer every question that walks in the door.
I appreciate that guidance. Do you guys want to answer this question? I posed that question to the board.
And if the answer is no, that you want to decline, like how Board of Accountancy did, you retract the prior motion of no.
Okay. So, do we want to opine on this question?
I mean, that gives you some cover.
Sure.
And that the board never officially took a position. There's nothing in the minutes. I mean, there's the conversation.
Sure, there's the conversation. And Terrence, thank you for that question. TG, thank you for the counsel. The previous guidance from 2022 that says that the Board of Nursing does not regulate out-of-state post-license programs makes very good sense and is pretty unambiguous because the law, the rules, very clearly specify that the board has purview over programs that prepare for licensure, which the nomenclature of post-license programs is problematic for that respect, but it does count APR programs. It's like, whatever. So we're looking at programs that prepare for licensure. So that's a pretty easy one. This case, we are in a weird sort of like language ambiguity situation. It's not helpful to our schools, it's not helpful to the Center for Nursing to not answer the question, but given the constraints in the language, maybe that's the prudent course of action for the board. Darren.
Comment. And I don't want to keep it off track. I would contend, though, the difference between post and pre is a big difference.
Yes.
Right? Your post is your people getting maybe an online bachelor's degree who got their associate's degree here that doesn't require clinical. It's a graduate student from another. It's getting a DNP from a program not in Hawaii. So the post-licensure piece, I think, differs. So if we don't have language about the pre and it's a void, then it does beg the question, do we even have a question to answer here, right? Although I might have a personal opinion about this.
Sure.
But it feels to me, and maybe I'm the only one, but the difference between a pre-licensure program and post
I'm
is different.
going to remind you that I don't like the language in the guidance because we don't use pre and post in the regulation. We talk about programs that prepare for licensure, which is what I would really prefer the guidance in this 2022 to say. But yes, I agree, but we're talking about programs that don't prepare for licensure in this guidance, which we don't have regulatory purview over anyhow. So do we want to answer the question or not? Jill?
I mean, I would say, I would answer it as no. That's how I would answer it, but.
Darren, do you want to?
I would answer it as.
So your answer to the question of, do you want to answer the question?
No, I'm answering the question that Laura.
I'm asking you, do you want to answer that question?
I would.
Jill wants to answer the question. Darren, do you want to answer the question?
You said no, but.
Because we could
that
still,
question-
we could still talk about it, right? We can give her an answer now, right? So that she doesn't have to go seek legal counsel. And then
exactly
put
what
it
I was
back on the
thinking.
agenda to discuss it, you know? I mean, these are Hawaii people that
There,
are
yes,
seeking
there's
licensure
public
and,
protection.
you know?
Yes. But
I'd say the answer is no also, based on the dialogue we've had here.
No, that's not the question.
my question is, do we want to answer Laura's question?
Do you want to
Because-
entertain?
We're not.
Yes. Do we want to entertain the conversation or entertain answering this question? So per Terrence's comment, we are not required, in the DAG's response, we are not required to opine on anything. So we can decline to provide an answer to Laura's question. Do we want to decline to answer Laura's question?
And so decline then, or abstaining is like a third option, right? We can say yes or no to this, or decline. Is that what I'm
Yes.
understanding?
Yes.
To the question.
My question is, you guys want to answer the question? Stop complicating things. It's a yes or no question. Do you guys want to answer Laura's question? You guys are killing
I'm
me
gonna go again.
so
Yes,
hard.
I wanna
Yes,
answer
Jill
the
wants to answer the
question.
question.
Yes, I want to.
Jill wants to answer the question. Darren wants to answer the question.
Brad wants to answer the question.
Yeah.
Brother wants to answer the question. So Terrence, it seems like we want to answer the question.
No, I just brought it up as an issue, thanks.
I appreciate that entire conversation, truly from the bottom of my heart. That is no sarcasm at all whatsoever. Sherry?
No,
Okay.
lesson learned.
Yep.
You don't have to answer everything that walks through the door.
Brilliant. I
Remember that.
will remember that forever until I am no longer on the Board of Nursing. Okay, so it seems like we want to answer that. Rebecca, Sherry, we're going to answer the question, okay? So I'm going to ask for a vote. The board's interpretation is that we do not regulate out-of-state nursing programs. So the answer to Laura's question is, does a school that has located out of the state but has students doing any kind of education in Hawaii, do they need board approval? The answer to that question is no. So I move that we answer Laura's question, no. Is there a second?
Jill, I'll second.
I will second that. This is Sherry.
Jill seconds, but thank you for your enthusiasm, Sherry, I
Okay.
appreciate that. Would any board member
I
like
third
to
then.
vote no, recuse themselves, or abstain from voting on that motion? Seeing none, hearing none, the ayes have it, the motion carries. Give a vote.
Thank you so much.
For guidance, okay.
If I may just add, I will be providing that additional document, and if there is an opportunity for further dialogue, or a working group, or a committee, or a committee, or whatever, the Center for Nursing is very invested in this as well. So please think of us as welcome and ready partners to.
I think based on the conversation today, there's clearly some interest amongst this board to clarify the language around a regulation of education. So I foresee something like that, probably. Awesome. Thank you for that. You guys are so much fun. You guys are so smart. Next item on the agenda is the discussion of proposed amendments to the
Before we
HR.
move on, is there any public testimony on
Oh,
this?
God, thanks, Alex. Is there anybody who would like to provide public testimony on that agenda item? God, I'm going to get fired from this job.
No, you will.
Your job.
Highly doubtful.
There are no raised hands.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. We will move on then to our next agenda item, which is the discussion of proposed amendments to healthcare-related Hawaii revised statutes. I'm going to hand that one back to the EO as well.
Thank you. Laura, please stay right there. All right.
The other Laura document.
Yes, the other Laura document. So Laura also brought this to our attention, that she has convened a working group that's been working for a couple of years on amendments to the HRS, particularly involving healthcare professional-related statutes. So Laura will correct me if I'm wrong or oversimplifying or anything like that, I hope. But what I've brought before the board today is primarily two things. One is a report which lays out some of the current barriers to practice right now in these healthcare-related statutes and some suggested amendments. Probably the key amendment is relating to this definition for a licensed healthcare provider. And what this would do is you would have a definition for a licensed healthcare provider that would be inserted throughout the healthcare professional-related statutes in areas where specific professions are generally listed. So, for example, relating to the scope of practice of a certain type of practice, they might list, okay, doctors can perform this, APRNs can perform this, but as the scope of practice changes over time, more professions might emerge, more professions might be able to perform this practice, but they won't be in the statute because the statute specifically names certain types of professions. So to avoid having to go back to the legislature and every single time this happens, instead the proposal is to have this definition of a licensed healthcare provider that basically says that the scope of practice in and of itself of that area controls. And so it's not that the profession needs to be specifically listed in the statute itself. Laura, is that accurate?
I hope that there's a transcript of that because that was the perfect summary. Thank you so much.
I would also add to that I love your optimistic statement that instead of having to change all the statutes, what actually happens in practice is that the statutes don't change. And so certain professions are excluded from being able to perform certain things when their scope of practice would otherwise allow it because they haven't been specifically named. So I think that's really kind of at the heart of...
That describes the current scenario.
Yeah.
And what Alex just described is the intent of this initiative.
Check. Yes. So that's the problem we're trying to solve. So the question for the board, Alex, is...
Right. So the question for the board, I guess, is twofold. One is just what the board's opinion is on this initiative overall. And then two, more specifically, we have a couple of suggested working definitions for a licensed healthcare provider that were provided by the report from Laura, also from Bradley, that I've put at the end of this document. So if the board has any opinions on those, any suggested changes or ideas or any dialogue.
So to the EO's first question, thoughts on this initiative in general? Discuss.
This is Bradley. I think over the last several years, specifically prior to my participation in the board, as a board member, there's been several legislative sessions where legislators are asking for a full review of the Hawaii revised statutes to take a look at essentially the inclusivity of the scopes of practice and what everybody's able to do, all that kind of stuff. And so doing this 3-year project was basically trying to work with the legislature to accomplish this so that we don't have to keep going back because they're sick of it, to be honest. And so that's really how this was borne out. And we've had folks from various different licensed professions that were part of this official working group, but not official from the state legislature. Right? And this is coming from a physician, psychology, pharmacy, APRNs, and PAs.
So interprofessional working group.
Correct.
Okay. That's a helpful background. Thank you. I assume then that means you would be in support of supporting this.
Yes, because it took us 3 years to do.
Other thoughts from the board? For my own part, I think this makes very good sense. I think that this would streamline things, make sure that everybody's allowed to do what they're supposed to do pursuant to the scope of practice described in their own statutes. That is ultimately how professions should be regulated. So I'm down for this. Sherry.
Jill, I would support too.
Oh, sorry, Jill, I didn't interrupt you.
That's okay.
That was a yes in support?
Yes.
Sherry.
Okay, that's great. I agree with it. When I read it, I think this is great. I would ask that you maybe check with NCSBN because on NCLEX, a healthcare provider, they use that term, is somebody that has like prescribing rights. So, I think we're all healthcare providers, but I would just ask that maybe we check on the definition according to the NCSBN. As far as
you're concerned about
students. Does that make sense?
You're concerned about students' interpretation of the term healthcare provider on the NCLEX?
Yes.
What are we changing? Sorry, this is Joe. We're changing it to professional, right? Isn't it?
Yeah.
Qualified licensed.
Oh, it's not healthcare provider, it's,
Professional, yeah.
okay. I'm good.
Okay. Thoughts from Rebecca or Terrence? Rebecca has no thoughts.
It's a very interesting conversation. I'm learning a lot. And I think of us, yeah, I agree with her. I think of us as all healthcare providers, and that's interesting that there's changing it to professional.
Do you have any concern with the approach that we would use sort of a cool, that's a no one?
No.
Okay. Terrence, thoughts? Have you any?
With generic.
Generic, yes? What? Say that again, Terrence?
I said I'm okay with the proposal.
Awesome. Darren, I think you're the only one who hasn't said anything.
No concern.
No concerns. So it seems that you have the board's, yes, we like this. Go team. Do you need to vote, or is our consensus fine?
No, that's fine.
Okay.
And then just regarding the definition of licensed healthcare provider or qualified licensed healthcare provider, do you folks have any specific thoughts on the proposals here? Any ideas on the definition in general?
So to be clear, the current definition, or the current nomenclature is licensed healthcare provider, and we are suggesting to revise it to qualified licensed healthcare professional.
Right, that's one of the.
Okay.
Okay, so it's sort of a two-step change. One is to change the term, and then what is the accompanying definition? Is that sort of what you're, okay, so we have a qualified licensed healthcare professional, as Laura's definition, means any healthcare professional whose scope and standards of practice is defined in the respective laws in Title 25 and associated administrative rules qualify them to provide healthcare services enacted in the chapter. Alternative definition is any individual who holds a current active license under Title 25 of the HRS and whose scope of practice is defined by applicable statutes and administrative rules authorizes them to provide healthcare services described in this chapter. Definitions are designed to be provider neutral, recognizing that more than one type of licensed healthcare professional may be qualified to provide same or similar services under their respective scopes of practice. I think the only thing I don't like about that suggested definition is that the rationale for the definition is not part of a definition. So I would remove that.
If I may, there is a suggestion to put something like that into the
Someplace
preamble
else.
so that that is in establishing session laws to establish the intent.
That,
Put the intent into record.
that would
So not remove it, but
move it.
change its location.
Actually, because the session laws don't often get carried over into the, well, they are
It's not in the statute, it's in
not
the
in
session
the
laws.
It's in the session laws.
Yeah.
So unless you do the research 5 years later or when you're looking, I would somehow revise so that the intent, and I wouldn't use the word intent, is captured into the definition.
Okay.
So it's all in there.
Check.
So kind of a hybrid of what exists today, kind of wordsmith their definition.
Yes, and it's certainly doable, and it can be a hybrid of the second and third.
What I liked about the second one was the active license thing. That was, yes, the active, current, active. I would add unencumbered personally, but that's just me. It's probably actually too specific. Never mind, I retract that suggestion. I don't know, I like them. Either one, I wouldn't hate. Thoughts?
So for example,
Laura and I are not competing.
Fair.
They say you're not competing.
We're not competing.
No, I just want the thing that will be agreed upon.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll put my baby down and somebody else's baby's gonna survive.
so if you wanted, in the bottom proposal from Bradley, authorizes them to provide the health care services described in this chapter and under their respective scopes of practice.
And then you don't need that third sentence because that, you just took care of it with that.
I took part of the.
You took part of it under their respective scopes of practice. Okay.
I think that's good.
Anybody mad at that? Board likes it.
Sounds good. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to select a couple of places in HRS 457 where this definition might be inserted. There's one suggestion that was already added at the bottom of this packet, but I think there might be a couple of more other places that it could be inserted, so maybe I'll gather those and bring it back to the board so they can see what it looks like in practice, specifically for the nursing staff.
Great, that would be super helpful, Ia, we appreciate that. Any other discussion from the board? Would anybody like to provide public testimony on this agenda item? Yes, I remember.
Thank you, Chair. There are no raised hands.
Thank you. Okay, awesome. Alrighty, we will move on then to agenda item number 7. Thank you, Laura. We appreciate all of that inquiry. Executive officer's report.
Yes. So just one item here, the 24th proclamation relating to wildfires. So we just discussed one of these at the last meeting, and it's materially the same regarding allowing out-of-state licensed, unencumbered nurses to come here and practice without a Hawaii license, and nurses who have been previously licensed in Hawaii but are currently not to practice here under the employ of a Hawaii healthcare provider. And this proclamation is set to expire in September 4th, 2025, unless superseded by another proclamation. Any public testimony on this agenda item?
Thank you, Alex. There are no raised hands.
All right.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to agenda item number 8 then, which is reports from Hawaii nursing organizations. Hey, Laura, you want to come on back? We'll start with the Hawaii State Center for Nursing. Laura Reichart.
It's been a long time, you guys. It's
going
well. Hi, Laura Reichart, Director of the Center for Nursing. One, I want to mahalo Mark. I reiterate everything that Carrie said, and I whispered this in your ear, but for everybody else's knowledge, I cried yesterday when I found out. I was so upset. You're so wonderful. You're so kind. You do really good work. You're like a great colleague. And I hope whatever you're doing, you just want to come back to us. But also, I wish you success, so we will miss you. 2, I want to let you all know that and I have these written up and I will send them over. The new Education Capacity Report, which is an annual report the Center for Nursing does, was released earlier this week. I'm going to name a couple of the highlights just for everybody's quick edification. One is in 2024, AACN reported an upswing in the number of nursing enrollments to BSN programs. And that kind of follows a decrease that they reported in 2022. And I mentioned that because there was an increase by 4% in our LPN programs and 2% in our ADN and BSN programs, an increase in our graduates. And then looking forward, so that was the students already enrolled. Looking forward at the enrollments that happened in this report time period, LPN, ADN, and BSNs all increased their available seats, which resulted in an increase in enrollment. And so you're seeing that upswing in Hawaii. So an increase even beyond that 2 and 4% I mentioned. And despite that, there is still an average of 2.9 fully qualified applicants that were submitted per opening for new students across our pre-licensure programs, ADN, BSN, and GEPN programs. We also know that many students will apply to multiple schools, so applications does not mean applicants. Some people are go-getters and they apply to many schools. But we do see that there continues to be a large demand for people to become nurses. People want to become nurses. So that's that first update. My second update is we are working on a large initiative related to updating the HRS review, as we just discussed. But in particular, and we didn't talk about it in the discussion earlier, but Chelsea Fukunaga was part of that initiative from the very beginning. A lot of the House resolutions actually named the Board of Nursing to be the reviewing party, and we had talked about it, and I said, hey, we've got bandwidth, like, let's do this together. And so I just want to recognize that strong collaboration with the Board of Nursing and also that effort that Chelsea had provided. Also, Bradley has helped quite a bit even before he was I mean, like, the co-chair, really. So I just want to recognize his work as well. And then I want to thank the board for the discussion related to nursing education, as well as the review that you all had with the HRS. The collaboration and partnership and the guidance that you're providing us is very important. And then finally, I want to thank PVL Licensing Branch for all of their work ratifying. It was a huge list this past month, or this current month. And I think it's very important that we publicly recognize the work that they're doing, because there continues to be the sentiment that we're short of nurses, but when almost 850 nurses are licensed in 1 month alone, that needs to be said, and it needs to be heard, and it needs to be recognized by the public. And I just want to thank them, all the people who have reviewed that work. So thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Laura? Any comments on her testimony? Great. We'll move on then. Thank you, Laura. We will hear from the Hawaii American Nurses Association, Elizabeth Kahakua.
Aloha, good morning, everyone.
Aloha.
So I'm going to start off by saying, Mark, I wish I worked with you more because you seem amazing. So good luck on everything that your future holds. I wanted to say that we are up to 500 members, which we're excited because that was our strategic planning goal, because we're such a small organization starting out. We're just 5 years old, so getting up there. So we hit 500 members. We just had our membership assembly in DC, and there's just lots going on, of course, with this administration and healthcare. So we've just been a part of lots of coalitions trying to get several things passed. The current one that we're on right now that is spearheaded by Washington State and California is a coalition concerning RFK Jr. Wanting to he's in thoughts of removing current members of the nonpartisan United States Preventative Services Task Force. And we have a statement that we're going to be releasing soon about that. We have 2 members going to the lobbyist meeting next month, at the end of this month, and the American Nurse Advocacy Institute, and we're just trying to do all we can to help Hawaii and keep healthcare going, and hopefully not to have everything get cut for us. But next month we have our conference, and I'm very excited and eager to see all of your faces there if you're able to attend. We're looking for sponsors, attendees. We're going to have a Nurse Excellent Award ceremony during the lunch period. So if you have any nurses you want to recognize, we're doing award ceremonies for that, currently taking nominations. We're also going to be doing a food bank drives because just prices are going up, and we're just hoping to help the community by giving back to the food banks. And we'll have our new elections for the 2026 board. The opening slots for the boards. We also are going to start a new graduation cord program for all of the new nurses. This is something new that we're trying to come up with, and we have like a 20-point system that we're going to be doing. So if they attend different nursing organization items or go to Hill Day, that's an immediate cord or anything like that. But does anybody have any questions?
What's the date of your conference, Elizabeth?
September 27th.
Thank you. Any other questions for Elizabeth? Great, thank you so much. We appreciate your update. Congratulations on the membership.
Thank you.
And our last report would come from HAPN, the Hawaii Association of Professional Nurses. Have we a rep from HAPN today?
Doesn't look like it.
Okay, no report from HAPN. Does anybody want to provide testimony on that agenda item of our nursing organization reports?
Thank you, Chair. There are no raised hands.
Thank you so much. All right, we've come to the place in the agenda where we're discussing applications for nursing licensure. So pursuant to, hold on, I lost my glasses, I can't read things. So at this point, I would like to move that the board go into executive session in accordance with HRS 92-4 and 92-5 to consider and evaluate personal information relating to individuals. Sorry, I'm going to stop that. Do we have anybody who wants to, do we have any applicants here? We have one application on the agenda. Is our applicant present? Okay, we do have an applicant present. So what will typically happen, Samantha, is that her name? Yes, thank you, is that the board will go and discuss the contents of your application, and then we will, thank you, Laura, we will pull you in if we have any questions for you about the content of your application. So sit tight, we're gonna chat, we'll let you know if we need to talk to you. That's a thumbs up, I appreciate that. Okay, that said, I will resume. The board will, I'd like to move that the board go into executive session pursuant to the affirmation to consider personal information relating to individuals who are applying for licenses and to consult with the board's attorney on questions and issues pertaining to the board's powers, duties, privileges, immunities, and liabilities. Is there a second?
Darren Dunbar, second.
Thank you very much. Does any board member wish to vote no, recuse themselves, or abstain from voting on that motion? Seeing none, hearing none, the ayes have it, the motion carries. We are in executive session.
details are not correct on my name. I just jokingly told Bradley they gave me a fruit. Those NPs are making some good money these days.
What should the correct
It should be DNP, RN. Thank you.
Are we back? Thanks, Mark, I appreciate that. All right, so at this time, I would like to make a motion to approve the ratification list for the LPNs, RNs, and APRNs that were appended to today's agenda. Is there a second?
This is Bradley second.
Thank you, Bradley. Does any board member wish to vote no, recuse themselves, or abstain from voting on that motion? Seeing none, hearing none, the ayes have it, the motion carries. All right, related to nurse license applications, we have one application for a registered nurse for Samantha Manor. Is there a motion related to this application?
This is Jill. I'll make a motion to approve the registered nurse license for Samantha Manor.
Is there a second?
This is Bradley second.
Thank you very much. Does any board member wish to vote no, recuse themselves, or abstain from voting on that motion? Seeing none, hearing none, the ayes have it, the motion carries. Congratulations, Ms. Manor, on your license to practice nursing in Hawaii. We have already concluded the Chapter 91 adjudicatory matters in recess pursuant to the law. So that takes us...
Chair, I just
Yeah.
want to let you know Sammy hearts your statement and our action.
Go team. Thank you, Bradley. All right, our next agenda item is our next meeting will be held on Thursday, September the 4th, 9 a.m., same time, same place. Board members, as a reminder, if for any reason you know that you cannot attend that board meeting, please let the executive officer know as soon as possible so that we can make sure we have a quorum ahead of the meeting.
I will need to attend that meeting virtually.
You will need to attend virtually. Cool, we will take you however we can get you, Darren. Thank you so much. Is there anything else?
Products before the meeting.
Oh, right, yes.
I should be okay by that.
With that, my parting comments, mahalo nui, Mark, we love you very much, and that we are adjourned. Ahui ho, everybody.
Thank you, Mark, for everything.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mark.
Just gotta